Welcome to Raptors Weekly for the week of June the 1st. The offseason is underway. June has already started. The draft is on the horizon, the last week of June, I think. And we also got the big Raptors Republic tournament happening on June 21st at Variety Village in Scarborough. But that's still a ways away. And to fill the gap from now till then, I got Andrew with me here. Hey, man.
What's going on, Zarar?
Nothing, just dealing with some audio issues for the last hour, but finally we're able to record, even though it's I'm using my shitty mic, but it should be good enough for the podcast.
I've been 2-0 for the last little while. What happened? I know the finals are starting. Did the Raptors make it? Is that happening?
No, no, you didn't hear? No, man. Turns out, it turns that Washington is actually a better team than they showed in the regular season, and here we are out of the playoffs.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, scratch everything I had planned on talking about.
Yeah. And we were at Real Sports on Thursday night, was for the RR get together, and saw a bunch of people there. It was good times, and I just felt this empty feeling that it's playoff time, postseason time, and the place is just dead. There's just nothing going on. The Leafs aren't even close to making it. The Raptors were out early, and just the whole town felt dead. And there was like a sports void that was so evident at that bar that it just felt there was an element of sadness in the RR get together.
I think we picked the one day of the year when, never mind not a local sports team having anything going on, but there wasn't even live. We went to Real Sports for dinner, and there was not live sports on television. Like there was nothing. Like there's no baseball games on. It was a weird, like a whole bunch of games got rained out or postponed. There was like a golf replay. I think they were playing on the big TV, like the replay from some like random tournament. It was very odd.
Don't forget darts.
Oh, sorry, darts was on. That's right.
Yeah.
I missed that. Wow.
And at one point, we were the only people at Real Sports around closing time. And closing time was kind of early because 11:30 started kicking us out. They were like, yeah, you got to go. There's nothing going on. We were the only people at the bar, so yeah, that's all that. Let's get to some Raptors news, vaguely that is. Let's start with the D-League team in Toronto. I think Tim Lightwicki mentioned that there might be a D-League team in Toronto next season in the GTA. So reaction to that, Andrew. Obviously, good news in terms of player development, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's great news. I mean, it seems like that's a really opportunistic tool as far as developing players goes. And I mean, there's a few teams that have started to use their D-League team to manage their cap and signing players off of their rookie contracts to start down there and making some deals that way. So, I mean, it's not earth-shattering, but it's neat.
Yeah, it's cool. And there's a second team in Toronto, which might be cool because when the Raptors do eventually start playing shitty, you can always kind of switch over to the D-League team, and expectations there would be really low.
Oh, yeah, because, whenever there's a really bad NBA team, you have to assume that their minor league team is just great.
So three guys that are going to be on that team are going to be Bruno, Baby, and the guy back from Australia, DeAndre Daniels, is back and he's working out with the other two. I know this because I follow Instagram, and in Instagram they're taking selfies and making all kinds of weird faces, which fills me with it's cute if you find that kind of stuff cute. I don't. I find that kind of annoying because I see these three guys and I'm like, our future depends on these three guys taking selfies. It doesn't seem right.
I mean, if we're going to get into young people taking selfies and make judgment calls based on that, we pretty much got to cut off everyone who's born after 1984.
I'm just old. So DeAndre Daniels came back from Australia, and I was talking to an Australian reporter from the Sunday Express there for about 45 minutes a few podcasts ago, and he mentioned that how DeAndre Daniels came in, and he was there to kind of replace Ennis, who went to Miami. And there were high expectations of DeAndre Daniels, but he only seemed to fulfill them on the defensive end kind of, and his shot was still a little off, and that's why he's kind of back in Toronto now. They weren't really too happy with him. Like, they liked him as a person and all that, but overall they felt it was a bit underwhelming in terms of what he produced offensively. At least he didn't replace Ennis the way they had anticipated him to.
I mean, I'm not sure what they were expecting from a second round pick who didn't really have much of a shot in college, but I mean, I guess that's it's a second round pick. Like, we'd like to get excited about it because it's our guy, but it's probably not someone who's going to be a reliable rotation player. It's hopefully maybe someone who could be a reliable rotation player, right?
Yeah. No doubt about it. The other Raptor news of the week is it's not really Raptor news, but hey, we're gonna swing it that way because we're low on content. Is Tom Thibodeau being fired from Chicago, and we'll get to it why it's Raptor news in a bit. But man, was there, like, usually when a coach gets fired, it's like two lines. You know, we'd like to thank so and so for their service. His record was 38 and 45 in the 2 years he was here, blah blah blah, and best of luck to him in the future. But did you happen to read Jerry Reinsdorf go off on Tom Thibodeau in his press release?
Yeah, kind of not concerned about burning bridges and sending a pretty clear message there. We've heard rumors and Jeff Van Gundy went off about it at one point during the season, and there's been lots of rumbles and reports, but it's pretty evident that Tom Thibodeau and the Bulls front office, I mean, it's not just that they didn't get along. Like, that was a toxic relationship.
Mm. And I was reading a couple of Bulls blogs before I started this podcast, and while I was struggling with the whole audio thing, they're not sad to see him go. They really felt that he kind of like how we accused Dwayne Casey of like mismanaging lineups. They really blame him for not integrating Pau Gasol into the lineup correctly, where Thibodeau kind of insisted playing Gasol and Noah together, even though evidence pointed that it didn't work and all the advanced stats pointed that way. But he was kind of stubborn. And I think his overplaying of Kirk Heinrich is another thing they were unhappy with. And kind of like how Dwayne Casey tends to overplay Terrence Ross. I saw a lot of parallels between the two coaches. Obviously, Thibodeau has a much stronger regular season record, but the Bulls fans they seem okay with this.
Yeah, I think that they're kind of the mindset as well that Tibbs overplaying Noah really ran him into the ground, that he's responsible for the ongoing corpse that was Luol Deng, possibly the Derrick Rose injury. I think that his stubbornness and his insistence on just playing guys 40 plus minutes a game is something that's contributed to that, and that's sort of where his falling out with the front office really escalated from as well. As far as misusing Pau Gasol goes, I mean, I felt like he got an awful lot out of Pau Gasol. Like, I'm not necessarily... I agree that the Bulls offense was poor, but it's curious to me to look at what Pau Gasol was doing for them this year and to think how they could have gotten more out of an old Pau Gasol. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I see having I see when he played Noah and Gasol at the same time. It was kind of like playing. It was a traditional lineup, right? A center and a power forward. But the way Noah plays the game, it's not very traditional. He's a great passing big man. He likes to play out a little bit, and Gasol likes to really play in the block a lot. So the area where players cut to, where Noah can find them, Gasol's kind of occupying that space. And while Gasol is like kind of posting up, Noah's just kind of contesting for the rebound. His passing game's not being utilized. I just felt that was maybe, and this is all in hindsight. At the time, I was like, yeah, maybe they should try that. But now, like the way Bulls fans are talking, it's like that was the problem. I disagree with him. I think he did a okay job managing the lineups. Sure, he could have gotten more out of the two, but hey, man, you could say that about any coach.
Yeah, I think the problem with Noah, the Noah Gasol lineups too. I mean, Noah really had an off year this year, and I think teams figured out that, I mean, the season before this season, he was he like fourth in MVP voting, and a lot of that had to do with how much facilitating he was doing from the elbows, and also like he was coming out all the way to the 3-point line and doing some weird dribble handoffs from the inside, and then faking dribble handoffs and either dribbling towards the net or trying to, like you're talking about, see cutters, and he was so hampered in his movement, and he was just so bad whenever he did try to go to the rim that teams just played completely off of him. And with Chicago not having the greatest shooting a lot of the times, it just really, really neutered his ability to generate any kind of offense and facilitate from that spot where they'd found so much good movement the year before. And I think that really clampered down that. Not so much the problem being that Noah and Gasol needed to occupy both the low post, because Noah's not really a low post scorer. It's just that, I mean, Noah had a really bad season for Noah.
Yeah, and I just think that the Bulls fans in general, and especially their bloggers, they kind of feel that success is owed to them, and they're supposed to be winning championships. And like how prior to Thibodeau, they had that kind of established, and they got to return to that. Nah, dude, nah. You guys had Michael Jordan for 6 years where he won titles, and that's it. Since then, you guys have been pretty much crap, with the exception of Thibodeau, basically. And like the way they talk about Thibodeau is that he he can't reach, he can't get them to the levels Michael can. Like, no shit, man. Like, it just, they feel like they have this franchise which has forever won NBA titles. When if you look at since Jordan retired, they've gone, they went like 7 seasons without making the playoffs. Under Skiles, they were crappy. Under Del Negro, they were horrible. Thibodeau, they did something at least. So I just don't see what the hate is.
They had a solid decade in the wilderness after Jordan until Derrick Rose got there.
Yeah. So, Bulls fans just gotta chill out a little bit.
I mean, like, good luck. I hope Fred Hoiberg is a great coach, and maybe he will be, but good luck trying to have him get a top 10 offense out of these same players, and I guarantee you that their defensive rating will slip notably without Thibodeau.
And you know what the argument they're making is like one blog of Bulls, I think it's the SB Nation blog for the Bulls. Like he's criticizing the Bulls offense by comparing the Bulls offensive rating to the NBA title winning offensive rating of that year. So of the last 5 years of Thibodeau, he got whatever the Bulls offensive rating is and whatever the NBA title winners offensive rating is. And like subtracting the two, like it means something. It was really weird, man.
Yeah, I guess 2019 should be firing their coach most seasons then.
Oh man! All right, so that was Thibodeau. So why is this Raptor news? Oh, it's Raptor news because Andrew, should the Raptors go after Thibodeau?
Yep.
All right,
sure.
Go for it.
He is. I believe Tom Thibodeau to be a better coach than Dwayne Casey. I don't think that Tom Thibodeau is the best coach in the world. But, I mean, like a 65% winning percentage he has as a head coach. And, I mean, maybe he learned something from this last experience. Maybe he brings someone else to bring in the offense. Or maybe with different offensive pieces, it's a different thing offensively. But wherever he coaches, they're going to become an astronomically better defensive team immediately.
Any other reasons?
I don't know. He's an interesting looking man. That's always kind of fun. Interesting to make barbs about in blogs because that's who we are.
I think I like that article by Sam Smith in I think on Bulls.com even where he talked about like how he over prepares for everything or really prepares for everything and how that he had to throw a first pitch at a baseball game and he spent like 4 hours just practicing pitching. Just preparation for that one pitch, and he was like sweating. He was in the bullpen, like a minor, like a kids league team had to come and just like check the ground out, like as part of some contest they had won. And he's like, nah, get away. I'm still practicing here.
Like Tom time.
Yeah, and that's the attitude he brings to the table. And when I look at one of the problems the Raptors had all year, or especially in the playoffs, is that lack of preparation for big games. And I just see Tom Thibodeau going into a series against Washington much more prepared than Dwayne Casey was. So I don't know, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, the Washington beat the Bulls last year. I'm giving you a take.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at every position on the roster as, hey, is this worth upgrading and is there a better upgrade available? I guess you look at past performance, current performance, future potential, blah blah, and you compare Dwayne Casey to Tom Thibodeau, and I'm like, yeah, you could probably upgrade that spot with Thibodeau than you would by sticking with Casey.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's that. Tick. Up next, I know you did some research for this podcast, and you want to talk about Demar DeRozan a little bit. Tell us about that.
Sure. So, just curious. I mean, we're going to play lots of Demar DeRozan trade ideas around through the summer, I think, and it's possible we could see him traded. Maybe we won't. And I think there's already clearly lots of backlash and lots of fervor in the fan community talking about how people want to trade DeMar or we're ungrateful or whatever it would be. But I think it's interesting to try to let's talk about the players that might be available in return for DeMar and just do like a yes or no. Would you trade for that person? And then do you think it's realistic that we could get that person back? Just to try to see what do you think, what is the generally accepted value of DeMar in exchange to sort of gauge what his value would be.
But to be clear, we're not saying trade DeMar DeRozan. We're just saying if you were to trade him, what kind of return would you expect?
Just playing a name game.
All right. Okay.
So for each name that I bring up, I will ask you to answer, would you take that trade, and do you think the other team makes that trade?
All right. Go for it. You got the notes on this one. I got nothing here. I got a blank screen in front of me.
Okay. DeMar DeRozan for Eric Gordon.
Yeah, see, that was the first guy that I that I knew you'd bring up. Um, Eric Gordon for the Pelicans, eh? I think they do that deal. I think they do
Okay.
that deal only because I think Gordon's what, like 7 years in, 8 years in? Like we
I
talk
think
about
he's
like
around the same age as DeMar, actually. Yeah.
yeah, but he's played more. And if you look at ceiling, you'd say Eric Gordon is a much more known quantity at this point than DeMar DeRozan is. I'm
Hmm.
not saying DeMar DeRozan isn't. It's just that if you had to say, okay, who has chance of reaching the next level at this point, with Gordon, you're like, he kind of definitely is what he is. Where with DeMar DeRozan, there's like this little hope that he might take a step up. With Gordon, you don't have that. So I think the Pelicans would definitely do that deal and maybe complement DeRozan with a younger DeRozan with Anthony Davis.
Interesting. I think I would take that deal for the Raptors, and I'm not sure if Pelicans would take it because the idea, I think, unless there's another deal they have to make, because a Tyreek Evans, DeMar DeRozan backcourt would just be all of the usage with none of the shooting.
Mm. Yeah, but the thing there is that once you get DeRozan, Tyreek Evans is not a mainstay at the Pelicans. Like he'd be
Contract.
yeah, I think he'd be on the table if somebody came calling for him. So I'm just taking from a team perspective, you're right. The kind of backcourt shooting kind of goes down for them because DeRozan can't shoot. But I think if you take a 5-year outlook of what they want to build around Anthony Davis, I'd say they'd make that deal and maybe suffer in the short term while they deal with Evans. But from a 5-year window perspective, I think they might take it. From a Raptors perspective, no,
Yeah.
I would not take that deal. Yeah, absolutely.
What about Tyreek Evans? Would you do DeMar for Tyreek
No,
Evans?
no, neither. No, Tyree. I never liked. I think he had one decent year in his rookie season, and since then he's the ultimate high usage guy. Even though he burns the Raptors every time, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that trade at all, just because Gordon doesn't appeal to me as he's basically an undersized two. Who has his defensive issues, much like DeMar had, but at least DeMar is improving, and Gordon has basically stagnated at this point. So I have no interest in that.
Okay.
This is what Tim W would call a treadmill move.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't disagree with you on that. Dante Exum.
Well, I think I don't know if a Dante Exum for DeRozan 1-for-1 is a fair deal. I think they'd have to throw in something more simply because DeRozan's more accomplished, don't you think?
Okay, so you think he's worth more than Dante Exum?
Yeah, I think just individually that would be like purely on a potential deal, and I don't know. Yeah.
But do you think Utah? That's how we would feel. But would you, if we call them and say, look, throw in something with Dante Exum, and we will give you DeMar DeRozan? Do you think they're trying to figure out what that other piece is, or do you think they hang up the phone?
They do that deal because
Okay.
they have a 19-year-old guy who is basically all potential. Like he averaged 5 points this season or something, and he shot.
He got better, but he didn't play a whole lot.
And he shot what? Like what? Like I think he played 15-20 minutes a game. Like what did he? Let me just check up here. 22 minutes a game. That's not bad for a rookie, and he shot 35%. So you give them DeRozan, an established all-star, albeit in the East. They'll look at that as, hey, this is what Dante Exum would probably become in like 6 years. So we just fast forwarded that. What about you?
Next up,
No.
Aaron Gordon.
No. What would you do
sorry.
here? Would you do this deal?
I'm queasy, but I haven't seen enough Dante Exum to feel confident making that deal. I mean, like you said, he's a 19-year-old who we don't necessarily know who he is yet. And so it's the idea of possibility versus what you probably think. I don't think I do the deal because I need to see Dante Exum have a reliable, consistent 3-point shot before I would buy all of the Dante Exum stock. So I say no as well.
So you think Utah would?
A guy who had all of the hype going into the draft last year, though. Like, if on draft night the Raptors offered DeMar DeRozan for Dante Exum, Utah says no.
Yeah. All right. What do you got next?
Another guy from last year's draft with Orlando, Aaron Gordon.
Aaron Gordon. I haven't seen too much of him play, but I just don't.
He was hurt for a lot of the year.
Yeah. So no. This is a high risk move for the Raptors. I mean, if you want to make a deal with Orlando, you got to talk Tobias Harris at least, and then we're
Tobias
talking.
Harris is a free agent, though, isn't he? Or he's restricted free agent.
Yeah, but they got the rights and all that, so they'll match probably any deal. But with Aaron Gordon, absolutely not, man. Like, why? He started like 5 games this year? No.
He
Pass.
started 8, played 47. Aaron Gordon projects like ceiling as like a Sean Marion type player, where like he could develop enough of an offensive game to have a role. He's a really big energy guy, crazy athletic, and could be a very, very good defender, very, very good rebounder.
I feel you can get a 3-and-D guy. If you want a 3-and-D type dude, go get DeMar Carroll in free agency. You don't necessarily need to trade your first or second best offensive player to do so.
All right.
What do you think?
I like Aaron Gordon. I think Aaron Gordon has a very interesting NBA career. I think that it's a lot easier to find a shooting guard than it is to find a small forward with really good size and the athleticism to potentially guard some of the league's elite players. So I think about the deal, but again, I feel queasy making a deal about a guy I've only seen that little from.
But what would making a deal like this say about what the Raptors are doing? Like what kind of message does it send to say Lowry or Lowry?
I think when you're trading, when any asset is on the table, it says that you acknowledge that you can't win a championship with the key pieces you have as your top end pieces. And I kind of think that that's the scenario.
So,
do you disagree?
So would you make this deal in the hopes that Aaron Gordon is going to be a future All-Star, or are you acknowledging he's going to be a good role player? Like, what do you? Because when you make a deal like this, you better hope the guy you're getting back is at least projected to be as good or better than the guy you're giving up. So, are you saying that Gordon projects to be better than DeRozan long term?
I think it's not crazy to think that Gordon could be a more important NBA player than DeRozan going forward. But again, I think that you need to have two players on your team better than him to be a contender, no matter where he ends up being. Which is what Sean Marion was in his peak as well.
And you could say the same thing about DeRozan too.
Sure.
Arguably. So what are you What are you really doing here?
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is I think it's easier to find a shooting guard who can score than it is to find a small forward who can do those other things for you, potentially.
All right. Fair enough.
All right, next name on the list. Nick Batum.
That's an interesting one.
Had a down year. He played through a lot of injuries. His shot disappeared. Had a weird up and down playoffs.
One for you go first on this one.
I would absolutely take. I think Portland possibly says no. There's some interesting rumors coming out of there about how they feel about a lot of their team right now, especially with LaMarcus Aldridge possibly leaving. But I take Nick Batum for a lot of the reasons I just talked about, and I think that Nick Batum can guard pretty much anyone really well. I think that he is smart with the ball, and I think that he's got reliable 3-point. I think that this last season is the exception, not the rule, as far as his 3-point shot goes. And if you give me a wing player who can play great defense, have solid energy, and hit 3-pointers and not turn the ball over, I think that's where the NBA is headed, much more than a high volume guy who may or may not be able to pass and who may or may not be able to guard larger guys.
Yeah. So assuming DeRozan, okay, I'd say I'd make this deal. I would make this deal because Batum's a year older than DeRozan. He's basically what we want DeRozan to be. Like, he's a better 3-point shooter. He's a better defender. He's a better passer. He's basically all things better. And I'm pretty sure that if you give Nicholas Batum the usage, if his usage rate is as high as DeMar DeRozan's is on the Raptors, he'd probably produce more. So this is a deal that I would definitely make. I think it solves the small forward position for the Raptors for the next 5-6 years at least. And then, as you said, then you got the shooting guard, which is, I guess, more easily able to fill. But doesn't this kind of raise the question? How are you going to fill that shooting guard? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to make another trade? Terrence Ross, hey, Mr.
So if you want to look down the list of, there are free agents. There are ways to fill that, I think, easier than getting a top I think Nicholas Batum is probably one of the 10 to 15 best small forwards in the NBA. I think that you can get someone like an Aaron Aflalo, or you can get someone like that in free agency who can be a reliable starter that can do the things you need your shooting guard to do: hit threes, play defense, be active. Easier than you can find someone like a Nicholas Batum who can guard top end guys and still contribute offensively.
Yeah. And but on the flip side, I don't think Portland does this deal just because their style of play is such that they need outside shooting, and as soon as you get DeMar DeRozan in, you kind of give that up. So I'd say they'd be reluctant, or at least they'd want more from the Raptors. They'd want some outside shooting to go the other way as well. And again, I think Batum's a more established NBA player, and he's like, if you ask 9 out of 10 guys, like they'll say that he's the better player, and I think Portland will view this that way as well. If Batum was in the East, he'd probably be an All-Star a lot more frequently than he has been.
Which is the interesting thing when we get to these questions about whenever someone wants to talk about trading DeMar or something, you say, well, we're giving up an All-Star. What are we getting in return? It's like, okay, but look at someone like Batum is an interesting example of that, where now we're trading an All-Star for someone who's never been on an All-Star team, and we're getting told no because being an All-Star has a lot to do with usage, high volume, and being in the East.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Would you trade DeMar DeRozan for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist?
No. Michael he's got role play written all over him. I don't see. He's a better defender of late. After a first year, he struggled. He's been better of late, but I don't know. I think he's got role play written all over him for the rest of his career, and DeMar DeRozan is already more than that, I think.
Do you think MKG, I mean, he talks about wanting to be the best defensive player ever. Do you think it's conceivable to see MKG in a year or two to be an all-team, all-NBA defensive player style kind of guy?
Yeah, but that's like saying, would you trade DeMar DeRozan for Tony Allen?
If Tony Allen was 5 years younger, I would.
Oh, if Tony Allen... What do you think MKG's offensive upside is, though?
I think he's getting a lot better at cutting. I think that he's slowly developing a shot. I still think that he is more of a liability than a benefit offensively, but I like the idea that he's crazy young and that he's putting in the time to slowly develop and come around. Mm-hmm. I think that that's a deal I would make.
Really?
I think long term that MKG has a better chance of being a contributor, though not, again, one of the two main pieces, but a very important contributor on a contending team than perhaps DeMar.
Yeah, he's 6'7", right? So he's somewhat not small, but he's a little undersized. But again, he's got longer. Yeah, he makes up for it on defense. But again, man, he shoots 20% from three, if that. Let me check here. 16.7%.
We're talking about a guy who's
from three. Okay.
Yeah, again, this is a guy who's literally reworking his shot entirely.
Yeah.
Changing the way that he shoots the ball.
Mm-hmm.
He did not shoot a single 3-pointer this year.
Mm.
He stopped shooting them.
Yeah, see, I'd be unless you're okay, if the Raptors are actually completely blowing it up and saying, okay, what we currently have is not working at all and we got to relook this entire thing, then I can say, okay, fine, DeRozan to the Hornets for MKG and say a pick. I'd be like, okay, fine. We're not doing anything here anyways. Let's just get what we can, build for the future, and do that thing. But in that scenario, maybe I'll make this trade. But in a scenario where we're competing next season, I don't know if I would.
Sure. Okay. Who's next on this list? Would you trade DeMar DeRozan for a top 5 pick in this draft? So again, we've talked about lots of guys so far who have been top 5 picks in drafts in the last 3 years now, and we've gone yes or no on some of them. Would you trade DeMar DeRozan for a top 5 pick in this draft?
I trade him for a top 3 pick, or I trade him for a top 2 pick for sure.
Okay, yeah, for top 2.
Yeah,
the Knicks call. They say the number 4 pick is available.
The Knicks call number 4 pick is available. See, I don't see Okafor and Towns. I'm like, yeah, let's do it, man. After that, I'm shaky. I'm shaky. But I'll say, yeah, I'd do it. I'd do it. I'd do it, and I would, in that situation, I would say, okay, let's rebuild. If that's what. Oh, let me put it this way: if that's what Ujiri decides to do, I won't be mad at him.
Okay.
Let me put it that way. I'd be upset. I'd be hurt. Hey, man, we just developed this guy for like 6 years, and now we're trading for a pick. I'd probably write an article like moaning about it, but then I wouldn't really.
This whole exercise isn't us trying to trade DeMar. It's trying to figure out what his value would be.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Would you trade him for a future unprotected first round pick
No,
from a
no.
regardless of franchise?
Okay, from where? Okay, tell me.
The Sacramento Kings offer you a unprotected first round pick.
Well, I don't know the draft well enough or college ball that deep enough to say yes or no to that. So who the upcoming people are? But let me flip that back to you. Both questions. Like, would you trade him for a top 4 pick and a future unprotected one?
A top 4 pick in this year. It's hard for me to say based on not having a ton of trust, but I think that it sounds like if you do that, you're probably going to get one of D'Angelo Russell, Justice Winslow, or one of the other bigs. And I based on, again, this is the problem with the hype and the projections, is that it seems like one of those guys could definitely be someone who you would value higher than DeMar DeRozan. But that's who Dante Exum was last year. That's who Michael Kidd-Gilchrist was 3 years ago. So it's tough. I think that I would be ready to see if someone else can have a higher ceiling at this point, because I'm just of the opinion that we've kind of seen the ceiling of the team as they are currently put together. I think DeMar is a very interesting player who has made it very clear that he's going to continue to get better, but I don't think he can be one of your 3 best players and you can make it to the conference finals in the East, let alone win a championship.
All right, so top 2 pick this year's draft. Would you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're in the same boat. Yeah, that's an automatic. Yeah, same here, man. I'm in the same boat. Same boat.
Would you trade DeMar DeRozan for Nerlens Noel?
No, not at all. I'd have to explain myself on this one.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, okay. Again, you're getting you got Nerlens Noel is going to be a fine defensive player in this league. I think he's going to average maybe a few blocks here and there. He might be a good. He might even hit, what's his best case in this league? Tyson Chandler? What do you think?
I think he's different than Tyson Chandler. I'm struggling to find a direct, reliable comparison for him. Maybe more someone like a Theo Ratliff. When Theo Ratliff is still good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like a guy who's
Mutombo? No, not Mutombo. Mutombo was like too.
I mean, Mutombo was. People forget how good Mutombo was.
Yeah. So would you do it?
Again, sorry?
Would you do it?
Do it for just Noel? I'm not. No, I don't think so. I think that DeMar's value is more than Nerlens Noel.
Yeah. Go on. Let's do a few more.
Ty Lawson. You've got a bit of a point guard logjam if you do that. You've got a Phoenix scenario from last year. But as far as just compiling assets go,
we already have Kyle Lowry. You would not even come close to that deal.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
It's an interesting question. Again, it makes no sense to trade DeMar DeRozan for Ty Lawson unless you have another place to send Ty Lawson or I guess Kyle Lowry in exchange. But as far as who's a more important NBA player when they're at their peak between Ty Lawson and DeMar DeRozan goes, I think it's Ty Lawson, and I think Ty Lawson is available right now. So again, agreed. I think Phoenix proved that it doesn't make sense to get a bunch of great quality starting point guards just because they're available. But I do think Ty Lawson is a better NBA player than DeMar DeRozan.
You think they'd make this deal?
I think. I don't know what the hell's going on in Denver, but I think it's evident that Ty Lawson wants out, and I'm not sure that they want anything to do with Ty Lawson either.
Yeah.
So I don't know what his value is, but I know that it's not. He's coming off a poor season for him, and he's got a really bad relationship with the team. And I think someone has an opportunity to get Ty Lawson on the cheap.
I got one for you. It's an easy one, I think, but I just want to make sure that you're on board. DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, I think yes. There's no way that the Clippers make that trade. Absolutely. DeAndre Jordan's going to get the max. If anyone gave DeMar DeRozan the max, I think people would pull their hair out.
Yeah, I think you're right. Patrick Beverley.
We're talking about free agents now as well. That's another thing. The last couple guys here, but no, Patrick Beverley, no,
Like you wouldn't make that deal.
no, absolutely not.
All right, I'm just making sure. All right, man. Let's do one more from you.
One more for me. Zach LaVine.
Yeah, this is a good one now, isn't it? So if you're rebuilding, and the plan is that the current team has hit its ceiling and we got to retool, then I would make that deal. Yes.
Interesting. The thing with Zach LaVine is how much of the possibility and the ceiling for Zach LaVine is tied to athletic ability, and how much of it is tied to basketball ability. Because I mean, no one's going to argue that he can absolutely mesmerize athletically. And he's a long guy, and he plays the wing, and there's a lot of hypothetical value in that, especially defensively. But is he a facilitator? Is he a good shooter? I'm not sure if we've seen him demonstrate those skills yet. Those are both what ifs.
He's also a rookie. And if you are retooling
Sure.
and you kind of said, the hell with this team, we've got to do something else, you would make that trade, I think, rather quickly if you're the Raptors. If you're looking to actually blow it all up and start fresh, I think you'd want a guy like Zach LaVine. Yeah, he's a bit of a douche, but he's a rookie, and I think sometimes we all are guilty of judging rookies a little too harshly. Like if all the great players that are today, we judge them after the rookie year, most of them would kind of have like average returns. So I tend to give the rookie year a bit of a pass and not be too harsh on that.
I would not. I think you can do better than Zach LaVine for DeMar DeRozan. I think that the highlights inflate Zach LaVine's trade status a little bit.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean he's got what, a 42% shooter, 34% from three. So yeah, he hasn't blown us away so far. But at the same time, I give him the rookie pass and say if you're blowing it all up, he might not be a bad guy to have. Especially if you want to get fans in the building, he's the type of guy who might be able to do that.
Yeah, that part is definitely true.
Yeah. All right, so I had one more question on the agenda before we sign off, man. And listeners, sorry about the audio quality for this podcast, but I just can't get that mixer to work today. It's you got to pick a reasonable free agent to target. Not like DeAndre Jordan, like somebody reasonable, somebody who'd be willing to come to Toronto, somebody who we wouldn't have to necessarily overpay too much. Is there one guy on the radar, Andrew, that you're like, if we get him, we might be able to solve a couple problems and kind of come out the better and not overpay too much and come out looking good? Anybody jump at you, like a reasonable free agent?
I've got 4 names who I think.
Wow, you're prepared. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that Tobias Harris is interesting, but just kind of interesting. I think someone might throw a little bit too much money on him. I think Thaddeus Young really bounced back in Brooklyn last year after being in no man's land in Minnesota, and I think he's an interesting tweener forward that you can a little versatile, who allows you to play small ball or do some other things that way. I think Luol Deng didn't have nearly as bad of a season as everyone thinks he kind of did, and I think that his value is very low because people think that he's kind of burnt out, and you could get some really good production from him at a reasonable price. And the other guy who I would be willing to throw money at, who might be really is Wes Matthews. Wes Matthews is awesome and a really important player, and if he didn't rupture his Achilles, he was going to get all of the money from someone, possibly Portland, possibly someone else. But the fact that he's going to miss a big chunk of next year, and I am much more trusting of someone coming off of an injury like that, with the way that medicine has improved and training has improved, and with someone who kind of came out of nowhere like him is clearly a work ethic guy. So I would rely on him to be able to put that time and money in. I think that if you can, whoever gets Wes Matthews, especially if they get him at lower money, is going to be really happy with that contract long term.
So I got 2 hawks for you, the 2 obvious ones. I think they're both actually attainable. I'm going to say DeMar Carroll. I think he's a guy that we've been looking for. If Dwayne Casey doesn't want to trust James Johnson with anything, he should be able to trust DeMar Carroll because he can kind of shoot the ball. So that should be requirement number 1. It might light a fire under Terrence Ross, give him some real competition from the 3-point line, and the guy can defend. So if you're a defensive-minded coach, you're looking for a guy who's who's shown that he has worked hard, and I think he will work hard after he gets his new deal. I'd target him. I think he'd be relatively not cheap. I think he'd be anywhere in the 8 to 10 range. I think you should be able to get him in that. So I'd say something like that might be doable. And I think Paul Millsap's there to be had. Like if you throw him the max he's able to make, you can get him on the team. It's simple as that. Whichever team offers him the max is going to get him. The problem is that he might get multiple such offers, and you're in a competitive situation there. But if you're able to sell Toronto, I'd say either one of Millsap or Carroll work for me.
Yeah, I think the problem is it's not might get several offers like that. I think that every smart team with any kind of a need at forward and money is going to be going after Paul Millsap. That his contract that he's finishing right now is an absolute coup de grace, and I think the league is on to how good and how versatile Paul Millsap is, and he's going to have his choice of suitors. And if the Raptors can be one of them, I would be very happy with that, considering the way the cap is going and the way the Raptors have managed their cap at basically any amount of money.
Yeah. I'd throw everything at him. And I got one more guy, which I'm a bit high on. Not too high, but I think he's there to be had at relatively cheap. He's a restricted guy, Chris Middleton from Milwaukee, who showed me something this year. Good three-point shooting, decent defender. Doesn't go inside as much as I like him to, but I think he's somebody you can get on, and he'd be an immediate contributor and spread the floor, which the Raptors desperately need. And again, light a fire under Terrence Ross. He's only 23.
Chris Middleton is good, man. He's going to get paid.
Yeah. What do you think he goes at? Like what range?
I think Chris Middleton is going to get like $9 million a year from someone.
There you go. So I'd say these are three guys on my end that I think solve a particular problem at two of the most problematic areas for the Raptors: small forward and power forward. So if you're able to do that, hey man, go for it.
Yeah, I think the contract that Alex Burks got last year, the 4 years, $40 million. I'd be surprised if Chris Middleton doesn't get that or something a little bit more than it.
Yeah. One more point about the Deng comment you made. I just think that Deng is I like Deng. I think if last year we were able to have him, that would have been great. I just think he's looking to go to a team that's really close to winning a title, and he's the last piece kind of. I don't think he comes to the Raptors and because he's expecting to compete and win a title, and that's not going to happen with the Raptors.
No, and I agree with you. I think that Luol Deng, if he opts out of his contract, is going to be very disappointed with what Luol Deng gets offered.
You think so? Wrong. You think his market value is that low?
Yeah, he went to Cleveland last year and he really didn't fit in there. And again, like I said, he didn't have nearly as bad of a season in Miami as people think he did, but the kind of consensus is that he was not great for Miami this year.
Yeah.
So I think people just think that he's, because of the playing the minutes that he did in the Tibbs system and leading the league in minutes a couple straight years and almost dying because he was leaking brain fluid from a bad spinal tap. I think that people think that he's a few years older than he is, and he's 30. So
yeah. All right, so we could probably continue this discussion for hours, but there are time limits to be respected. And I hope you enjoyed this discussion about DeMar DeRozan. Maybe we should do the same about Kyle Lowry at some point. But hey, this is what summertime podcasting sounds like, listener. So get used to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
But with better audio quality moving forward.
Yeah, we got to get that fixed for next week, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe it's time to head to Best Buy and get some new equipment. But hey, all that is logistics, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks, Andrew.
Have a week.
Later, Matt.